Hello everyone, I'm Santiago, and today I'm gonna be reviewing the RX 570, the Gigabyte Aorus RX 570. As you can see, here's the box, very thin box. First of all, before starting, I need to clarify something. This is not a sponsored video. Nobody sent me this GPU, nobody paid me to give my opinion. This is just me buying this GPU, wanted to review it, because it's very cheap right now compared to 1050 Ti's and 1060s. Which I found very interesting since mining is less valuable right now. The cards are very cheap. So yeah, let's get started. Here's the graphics card. As you can see, the RX 570. It has a backplate with this heatsink back here. As far as I know, this doesn't make a difference in temperatures, but it does help for if the PCB wants to bend. This helps keeping it straight. So yeah, a very cool backplate over there. Then here we got the video outs. It's dual link DVI-D, so it's only digital. You cannot do analog with it. You need to find a converter, if you have a VGA monitor, that can convert the signal from digital to analog, because the usual ones, the cheap ones, won't do the job. We only have the digital output. Then here we have the one HDMI 2.0 and 3 DisplayPorts 1.4. And that's about it for the outputs. Sorry if it was a little dark, my room doesn't have very good lighting. As you can see over there, it requires an 8-pin. Nothing major if you ask me. With the EVGA 430 watt power supply, there was a connector for that, so it works. Now I'm going to quickly list the specs from the webpage if you want to know them. I'm going to put them on the screen, but at the moment, here's the card. The core clock on the overclocked mode is 1295 MHz. You manually can probably boost it way higher than that. On the gaming mode, which is the one from the factory, it's on 1280 MHz. According to Gigabyte, the reference card runs at 1244 MHz. It has 2048 stream processors, 4 GB of GDDR5 memory, and a 256-bit bus. Then the card size in height is 36 millimeters, and length is 232 millimeters, and is 121 millimeters wide, so you can have more of an idea on the size of it. The recommended power supply from Gigabyte is 450 watts. Personally, with a 430 watt power supply, it was more than enough to give power to this GPU and an i5-8400, so no worries about that. And those are pretty much the specs. Right now I'm going to show you some benchmarks. First of all will be 2 or 3 games just testing this GPU with the i5-8400 with the stock settings. After that I'll show you like 4 or 5 games with this card, but compared to the 1050 Ti and the GTX 1063 GB. Since right now, at least on Amazon and Newegg, the prices are very close between them. I paid $170 for this one, which in my opinion was a great deal. Some 1050 Ti's were around $199, others $170, so this was perfect. A couple weeks later it dropped to $155, which was crazy. Right now it rises to $200, so that's something to keep in mind. So yeah, let's get started with the benchmarks, and after that I'll give you my conclusions.
Together! Split up! They're dead! They're dead! Smoke out!
Hey! Damn it! Right there!
Hey! I'm on Alpha!
Les voilà! Feindlicher Soldat geortet! Da drüben! Rakete ist unterwegs! Wir müssen sie haben! Zurückziehen! Das sind zu viele! Rückzug! Alle Mann zurück! Weg hier! Nichts wie weg hier! Zurück!
Si gano yo, to be honest,
Hola, compadre Smith. Yes, I still have a fumigation unit of the optimista capsule. I'll remove both units when I zone finito pazzo.
You know the exterminator guy who's working on Daddy's house?
Same guy who just did Cassie's, right?
Yeah. So I let him use the green shipping container to store some chemicals. I asked him if it was poisonous, but he assured me
Yeah,
that
Doc,
it
I
was
know. This daddy guy is driving me crazy. Every
So yeah guys, those were the results. As you could see, the RX 570 destroyed the 1050 Ti on most games, which was to be expected. But remember, the prices vary from country to country, so my opinion is between the prices that I see nowadays. If the prices in your country are different, I can understand, just look at the numbers and you decide. I'm just going to tell you what I think with what we have right now. So against the 1050 Ti, as I said, most games weigh significantly faster on the 570, but against the 1060 3GB, I was very surprised on how close it was, especially on Forza Horizon 4, but on that one was because of the VRAM limit. As you can remember, the 1060 3GB only had 3GB of VRAM, and Forza requires a lot of VRAM. That's why this one had a lot of extra FPS on that one, which was one of the big differences. Then other things that I noticed were that the 570 used more system RAM on most games, especially on Shadow of the Tomb Raider. It seems that that game uses more VRAM on the AMD card, because when I lowered textures on that one, it was using less system RAM, better said. So yeah, keep that in mind. You might need more system RAM to run this GPU correctly, I guess, or just lower the texture quality on some games. So yeah, to sum up, the 1050 Ti was the slowest, then the 570, then the 1060. Between the 570 and the 1060, depending on the game, you can get different results. On games that favor NVIDIA, like Assassin's Creed Odyssey, you can get very close frame rates to the 1050 Ti, like 5 FPS more in that case. But then on games that are neutral, to say it in some way, this was very close to the 1060. Also on Hitman 2, I saw a big difference. The 1060 was way faster than this card, and this card was a few extra frames on the 1050 Ti. So yeah, I would expect a few extra frames on the 1050 Ti in NVIDIA specific titles, and then on, well, AMD titles, to say it in some way, this should be closer to the 1060. Sometimes it beats it if you don't lower the texture quality on the 1060. And then on neutral titles, this should be faster than the 1050 Ti and close to the 1060 3GB, which for the price that I found on Amazon and Newegg is fantastic. I mean, this was between 150 and 199. The 1050 Ti was very close to that price too. Then the 1060 3GB was around that price as well, 170 to 200, at least for what I could see. And well, now I'm going to talk about some features that I really liked on the AMD side. Personally, I will get this card with the prices that I told you. If they are very close in price to the 1050 Ti and is cheaper than the 1060, I will get this one because it also has FreeSync support. So if you have a FreeSync monitor, which are the cheapest ones nowadays, you can get, it's a variable refresh rate, to say it in some way, so you won't get screen tear between, well, the range that your monitor accepts. So yeah, if you want to do this on an NVIDIA card, it will be way more expensive. G-Sync monitors are significantly more expensive. So yeah, there are more FreeSync options out there. So I think that's a great feature. If you're interested, just in between 40 and 60 frames per second, the game will feel very smooth using FreeSync. I also like the drivers nowadays, all the tools that are included without using an account or anything like that. You get Wattman, which is a tool to overclock the GPU. You can also customize your fan curves, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, even undervolt the card, which is fantastic. It uses less power, less heat. That wasn't done in this video. I'll do a separate video talking about that. If you are interested, maybe a tutorial or something like that. Also, you got some options that were already on NVIDIA cards way before AMD, which is ARRI Live to record gameplay. You also have profiles for games that the program tells you if the game is supported by your PC. That is very basic functionality, but it's still there. It's something new. Software that wasn't on the NVIDIA was an overlay. You just press a combination of buttons, you get an overlay, and with that overlay you can just see your frame rate, your frame times. You can do some basic benchmarking to see how the game is performing without any extra software. Just by installing the driver, you get all that functionality built in. You can now even use the overclocking utility inside the game. You just put the AMD overlay and you get all those options. You can even enable FreeSync from there. So I think it's very good functionality with the new driver released yesterday. I mean, overclocking while in-game is something I don't usually do, which will be much faster. But yeah, and also there's a promotion right now. If you bought an RX 570, 580 or something like that, if you bought the card after November 15th or 2018 and before February 2019, you can get two AAA titles between Resident Evil 2, Devil May Cry 5 and The Division 2. You can select two of those if you bought an RX 570, 580, and if you got an RX 590 or a VEGA GPU, or an RX VEGA GPU, you can get all those three games. In my case, I selected Devil May Cry 5 and Resident Evil 2 Remake because those are games I'm really looking forward to and I'm going to be benchmarking. So yeah, just check with your retailer how that promotion helps. I just had to send an email with my receipt from this card and a picture of the box where the part number and the serial number is located. And they sent me a code. I went into AMD Rewards and just redeemed my key. Just redeemed what they sent me via email. And that's how I got the code to just get those games. They'll send me the code once the game is released, which is awesome. I'm going to get Resident Evil 2 and Devil May Cry 5. In my opinion, that adds way more value. You get two AAA titles that are not even released yet. So you're saving like $100 if each game costed $50. So that's, in my opinion, even more value if you buy it nowadays. And also, I forgot to mention, the card has pretty decent temperatures. It's set between 75 degrees Celsius and 65, depending on how much time you're playing, of course. You can hear the card, but with my headphones on, I don't really notice it that much. So I don't have a big issue with that. And well, on the 1050 Ti's side, it uses less power, so the temperatures were lower. And the 1060, for some reason, it wanted to do little noise with the stock fan curve, so it stayed at 70, and then it was dropping to 65 after like half an hour of gameplay. So the 1060 didn't have problems with temperatures, it was just that the stock fan curve was kinda bad. Anyway guys, that's the end of my review. I'll be talking about overclocking in a separate video. Also, if you want to see more benchmarks with this card against the 1050 Ti and the 1060, just follow the link down in the description. I also have a comparison using an i3-8100, which should show you how the AMD GPU uses CPU against the 1050 Ti, which in my opinion is a good thing to know, depending on what CPU you have. But yeah, in my opinion, great value. You get FreeSync, which you can get a pretty cheap monitor with variable refresh rate, and you also get two free games, two unreleased free games. So that, in my opinion, is perfect for the value proposition. So yeah, thank you guys for watching and see you next time.